Hey, how's everyone doing? Jared here. So if you're like me and like playing the big boy games on a laptop but don't have the cash to pay what can sometimes be a pretty huge entry fee. Good morning, Mr. Bush. Welcome to Capital Bank. I understand you want to take out a second mortgage on your home. Do you mind if I ask what for? Oh, yeah, I'm trying to get funds together to buy a sweet gaming rig. So, Mr. Bush, I'm not sure that's the best use of. Don't you tell me how to spend my money, fool. Yeah, don't do that. Instead, let's take a look at the Acer VX 15 budget-conscious gaming laptop. Now, spoiler alert, I really like this laptop. In fact, if you look at almost any current review of this guy, you'll get the same reaction from everyone else because the VX 15 starts at $800 and goes up to about $1,050 depending on the configuration you choose. But while I'd recommend the $900 config for the best bang for your buck, here I have the $800 config and it comes with some pretty surprisingly good specs. But starting with the look and build quality, I like it, and I think for the price and internal specs it comes with, the all-plastic build is an acceptable trade-off. The rear-facing vent grills are very reminiscent of Acer's Predator series gaming laptops. In fact, the whole thing is actually very Predator-inspired feeling with the red stripes on the lid, red highlights around the trackpad, and the highlighted WASD keys. Overall, I think it's got a good look. Not too aggressive looking, but still gives that hint of, I'm a gaming laptop, bitch. Now, some folks have expressed concern for the hinge design. Well, at the moment, it's a pretty solid feeling hinge. There's no wobble when typing with it on my lap, but while that might be a good sign now, only time will tell, really. For ports and I/O, on the left side, we're looking at a Kensington security slot, charging port, a single USB 2.0 port, SD card reader, and an audio port. Now on the right, we've got a single USB-C port, though it's not a Thunderbolt port or have any special charging capabilities. But next to that are two USB 3.0 ports, one with power off charging. Ooh, fancy. An HDMI port and an Ethernet port. Now I don't really have any major complaints about the keyboard itself. It's got red backlighting, which is another nice touch, and good key travel, but I would have loved a tad more tactility to the keys because they're a tiny bit mushier than I'd like for a laptop keyboard, and it'd be nice if the key actuation was a little earlier, but that's just me nitpicking. The trackpad isn't anything special for me. It's plastic, smooth, accurate, but maybe doesn't have the best palm rejection, or maybe I just have really muscly palms from all that porn. I mean, I've used better, but I've also used worse. The little speakers on this guy are more or less downward facing, which isn't my preference, but at least they're facing the user a little. I've read and heard different opinions on them. I think they sound just fine for a laptop. I mean, for watching videos, they're great, but if you want to watch a movie or listen to music or game, I mean, come on, it's a laptop. Get some bloody headphones for God's sakes. So for the display, we're looking at a 15.6-inch 1080p IPS display. So it's a nice display, but it sort of reminds you of this laptop's price, because while looking head on, saturation, blacks, contrast, and sharpness all look pretty good. But from what I've found, its color accuracy could use some tweaking, and its narrow viewing angles are what surprised me for an IPS panel, not to mention some strange light bleeding from the top left and right corners of the display. But let's face it, how many times do you find yourself with a bloody crowd gathered around you while trying to increase your player ranking? I'm gonna see there's like one or two guys watching this right now being like, me? Now, when choosing your VX 15, there's several different configs to choose from actually. The one that I asked to review is the lowest spec config at $800, which comes with an Intel i5-7300HQ, 8 gigs of DDR4 RAM, upgradable to 32 gigs if you want, an NVIDIA GTX 1050 GPU, and a 256 gigabyte M.2 SSD. But the storage can be expanded with a 2.5-inch SSD if you request the free mounting hardware when placing your order, so that's pretty sweet. Now, having said that, if you got an extra $100 more, you could get it with 16 gigabytes of RAM and a GTX 1050 Ti, for example, or for an extra $200, you could get it with an Intel i7-7700HQ, 16 gigs of RAM, and a 1050 Ti. So you've got some pretty sweet choices, but whatever choice you go with, you're getting a pretty badass little budget gaming machine. So for gaming performance, I have no complaints. I've been playing Overwatch at an average of 70 FPS on ultra settings and around between 50 to 60 FPS on epic settings. With Battlefield 1, however, I was able to get away with about 40 FPS on average with high settings and an average of about 50 FPS on medium settings, which although isn't quite at the target 60 FPS most of us are going for, it's obviously still very playable and smooth. Now, the currently installed SSD had a read and write speed of 450 and 326 megabytes per second respectively, which surprised me because other reviewers have managed to get higher read and write speeds consisting of around 560 and 520 megabytes per second respectively, so not quite sure what was going on with my unit. And while playing Battlefield 1 for a couple of hours straight, while I don't have a decibel level tester, I can tell you it's miles quieter than my old MSI gaming notebook with a bloody NVIDIA 940, or even Acer's Predator 15 and 17, which I've reviewed both of, and sound like you're standing on an aircraft carrier watching jets take off. Now, battery life is actually pretty damn good with this guy. Doing light tasks like watching online video content or browsing the web with a ton of tabs littered all over the place, as I tend to do for some reason. I need help. I seem to get away with about 4 to 4.5 hours at max brightness. Acer claims 6 hours at 50% brightness, but my future's bright, so get it? Because the display's brightness is... Sorry. But gaming on battery, not surprisingly, I only managed to squeak out about 2.5 hours, so you just plug it in. Plug it in, plug it in. You guys remember those Glade commercials from back in the day? Boot up times are within 8 seconds. It's got a sweet GTX 10 series GPU capable of playing most major titles at acceptable graphics settings with satisfactory performance. You're getting a good to great CPU depending on the configuration you choose. Pretty good battery life and actually solid overall construction even though it's all plastic. Having said all that, I'd still recommend you go for the $900 configuration because for only $100 more than this model, you get more RAM and a respectable bump in the GPU, adding up to a pretty decent overall performance jump. Anyways, if you're looking for a new laptop with limited funds on hand, I actually give this sucker some pretty high recommendations. But that about does it for this one. If you like the video, as always, I appreciate the love you show me with the like button and in the comments. But if you're new to my stuff, don't forget to subscribe for new videos every week. Thanks as always for watching, and I'll talk to you all in the next one. Cheers.